Hello. Hello, hello. Oh, no, you guys can chit chat for a second. I was just going to say hello. So my name's Alexandra. I'm with Battery Earth, and I'm going to let Mitra introduce everybody. And Fati over here is also with Battery Earth. If you guys are interested in joining us and helping with some of the events or the panels or anything like that, we have a LinkedIn group that we're trying to get going a little bit more. Is anybody here already a Battery Earth member? Yay, you have to join. So, and you'll see why. We have a great dynamic group and interesting group. And I'll let Mitra take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to our Earth Day event and on corporations on sustainability. We're really excited to have this panel here. Our panelists are agents of change, and we want to talk about what companies are doing in the business practices and their impact on sustainability, what we can do in everyday life and be agents of change ourselves, and how we can be activists in our daily lives and contribute. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. We're starting with Melissa Rosa at the end. She's the Impact Program Manager at Planet. We also have Jeannie Linham from Genentech, and she's a Climate Action and Resilience Manager at Genentech. And then Katie Collins, who's a Senior Sustainability Manager for Innovation and Engagement at Meta. So we're very excited to have everyone here. And do you guys want to introduce yourselves a little bit and a little bit about what you're doing at your companies? You want to start, Katie?
Sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. Happy Earth Week, Earth Month, wherever you are in the Earth celebration or how exhausted you are if you're in sustainability. Not speaking from personal experience or anything. My name is Katie Collins. I'm on the sustainability team at Meta, the artist formerly known as Facebook. And we have Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Messenger as part of our company. And the role of myself and my team is to help run the sustainability strategy across the company and really infuse it across the business with all our stakeholders, which include executives, employees, and also a bunch of partners. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeannie Linham, and I work at Genentech. I'm the Climate Action and Resilience Program Manager. So let's see. I mainly oversee the emissions reductions from all our operations, and I also do a lot of employee engagement, a lot of just serving on a lot of different teams. We're part of Roche, which is global, and so it's just like being an advisor to whatever is needed in order to help get our goals met.
Hey, everybody. I'm Melissa Rosa, Impact Program Manager at Planet. Planet is a satellite and data company based here in San Francisco. They operate and build the largest constellation of Earth imaging satellites, and some of the images you're seeing right now over there on the screen, maybe still. And Planet was founded with the mission to help life on Earth and image the Earth on a near daily basis in order to make change visible, accessible, and actionable. So it's a private company, but I work on the non-commercial side. So we provide imagery in kind to a lot of NGOs, philanthropic organizations, think tanks, research groups, in order to really scale up impact at Planet. And that's the program that I manage.
Great. So our first question is, how does your company approach the climate crisis? Do you want to start, Melissa?
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, Planet was founded with a mission to help life on Earth. So it's already in our DNA in terms of sustainability and climate. We are, really looking at satellite data as a way to help with the transition to sustainability and climate, really fuel that transition. So we're working really closely with governments and NGOs, academic partners, as well as corporations, helping them to track and monitor their sustainability goals, because you can't manage what you can't measure. So because of the imagery and the detail that it provides, we're able to give them that data in a way that's unprecedented, because we're giving them high resolution data in terms of time and space that allows them to track those goals in order to make quicker decisions, in order to take more action on the ground. So that is a lot of what we're doing externally at the higher level. But internally, we also have our climate goals, and we just last year became a carbon neutral certified company. So that involved working with a third-party certification body to go through the process of auditing our carbon emissions for 2020 and then offsetting those emissions, which we did through purchasing forest carbon offsets. And we did that through one of our customers, actually, Pachama, that manages and monitors those forest projects. So it was a nice full circle there. And so moving forward, we plan to maintain our carbon neutrality. So we'll be auditing our emissions every year with the goal of becoming net zero in the near future.
Great. Jeannie, do you want to tell us what Genentech's doing?
Sure. Let's see, Genentech. Let me tell you a little bit about Genentech. I don't know if y'all know, but it's a biotech company. It's actually the first biotech company. And we're nestled on the bay, right in between the airport and San Francisco. We have 60 buildings, and we have labs, and we have manufacturing, and tons of just office buildings. And so there's a lot to see when it comes to climate. And when we first started, let's see, nearly 20 years ago, I wasn't there, but we set our first environmental goals like water, waste, and energy before other people were setting them. It's because we had a scrappy group of Green Jeans members that were passionate about this. And let's see, right before, about 11 years ago, we were acquired by Roche, which is a very large pharma company. And so as we've grown, we've just definitely expanded. So now we have 4,000 Green Jeans members. So we have a supportive base. And with Roche, the founder of Roche actually started the World Wildlife Fund, their family. So we have an incredible board with up on top and a supportive grassroots organization. So how it's changed now is that we have sustainability integrated almost throughout the company. We have sustainability in our labs with green labs and sustainable science in our product stewardship. We have sustainability in our sales fleet because we have all sorts of goals around electrifying our sales fleet. So it's actually integrated now throughout the company. And so Green Jeans members are all over. So we approach it sort of in an integrated way, which is very different than just having a small team. Now we have sustainability coming up to us, and people are pulling us to projects instead of having to push everything all the time. But we also expanded beyond our operations to include commute, which is scope 3, and other scope 3. And we've also expanded to really consider how our climate solutions need to include climate equity. So we've expanded also to address climate from that point of view.
I'm sure if you live in the Bay Area, you've seen the electric buses that have Genentech all over them. So Katie, do you want to tell us what Meta's doing?
Yeah, sure. So I thought Jeannie gave a really good overview of how you can think about corporate sustainability. So you have the footprint of your company, which is often what has to do with where your energy is sourced, where your water is sourced, and that has to do with the greenhouse gas emissions associated with your footprint. For Meta, that's our data centers. So since 2020, we've used 100% renewable energy for our scope 1 and scope 2, which is our direct emissions. And that's thanks to over a decade-long renewable energy and climate program, which is great. 2 years ago, what is time anymore? We set a net zero 2030 goal. So now we're looking at scope 3, which includes employee commute, and it also includes our supply chain, which is huge, which includes both for our data center operations, but also our consumer hardware, if anyone is familiar with our VR headsets, Oculus, and the like. And then when we think about, our products and platforms, there's a huge opportunity there. Does anyone here use WhatsApp? Any hands? Okay. For those of you on the webcam, a lot of people are raising their hands. And that's just one of our many tools, Instagram and Facebook and all. And so we actually reached 3 billion users. And so the opportunity for us to get out authoritative climate information out there and work with creators is something that we're just scratching the surface of. And we're doing that more and more as we invest in our product roadmap. But I think to Jeannie's point, we really wanted to get our own house in order and then involved other work in our data centers and our offices, and now increasingly in our supply chain and on platform.
Can you just explain the scope levels and what they mean?
Yes, I can try. But great, thank you. Whenever we get jargony, just like hit our hand a little bit. This is perfect. Did I mention that we're a little tired? So the ways that you think about scope is around influence. So scope 1 is your direct. Scope 2 is direct, but not as direct. And scope 3 is indirect. And maybe I'll pass it over to Jeannie, who does the footprinting of her company. But the way that I think about it is, like what our data center uses. So that's clearly like what Meta owns and utilizes. That's what we have the most control over. But let's say if we want our suppliers to utilize renewable energy, that's a couple of degrees outside of our scope. But I think you probably could explain it more clearly.
I think you did a great job.
Okay.
I mean,
She actually does this for their company. There's much smarter people at my company that do that. So I don't mean to.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, I'll just give you a quick example. So scope 1 is the emissions that you actually generate on your campus. So it's the cars you drive on the campus, or it's the natural gas you burn on your campus. And then second is the indirect, which means it's the emissions coming from like utilities that are sort of a direct, but not exactly direct. And scope 3 are the more optional things like employee commute, something that you don't really have direct control over, but are related to your business, like your supply chain, right? You can't tell your suppliers what to do, and how much your employees fly. You sometimes can control that, but so those are the less controllable emissions.
And I'll just add on to that, which is that scope 3 is what we all are trying to figure out right now, because it is the degree of influence. It's not so much that we can control what those stakeholders are doing, but using our brand power or our goals or partnering with our peers to get there. And that's going to be kind of one of the big challenges that we have ahead to get to 2030 goals and 2050 goals that the IPCC is laying out.
And I'll say that scope 3 is also the largest typically for a company in terms of emissions, which makes it even harder to address. At Planet, you would think that the fuel to launch the rockets that carry the satellites in the space would be our largest emissions, but it actually makes up 1% of our total emissions. And scope 3, and that falls under scope 1, but scope 3 is still by far our largest at 69% of our emissions.
That's great information. What are your key sustainability measures or priority topics right now? Do you want to tell us, Jeannie, about Genentech?
Absolutely. I think what's really important about Genentech is that many of us are scientists, so we get the climate science, we get that it's urgent, we get that the window to take action is really narrowing, and that any more emissions that we generate make an impact. So everything we can do now is important. So one of the most important again, goals that we've set is a zero emissions goal for 2050. And that means no offsets. It's not a net zero, but it's a true zero, because we were investing actually in our operations to get rid of fossil fuels. But the really cool thing about this goal is that it's front loaded. I don't know if you heard Katie say that the IPCC, we really need to cut our emissions by 50% by 2030 in order to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. I don't know if y'all know about that. So this goal, we're front loading it. So we are cutting 40%, not by 2030, but by 2025, and by 75% by 2029. So I'm just really excited that we have this goal and that our company's behind it. And this means we're electrifying everything on our campus. We are electrifying all our manufacturing, we're electrifying our labs. This is not easy. We don't even have the technology to do all this. And we have 1,300 people in cars in our sales fleet. I'm talking about in Montana and Wyoming, where it's cold, and we're requiring everybody to go electric by 2030. So we're not sure how we're going to get there, And I don't think they're sure how we're going to get them there either. But, but we're hoping it's all going to, we're convinced it's the best way to go. And the other thing to support these goals, we really care about air travel. We've already done so much on energy that air travel is really huge in order for us to meet this. And as y'all know, I mean, we haven't been traveling much. So the key is to keep that down. And the other thing really, really important to us is commute. And yeah, as Mitra said, y'all might have seen the Genentech buses around. But commute is really important because it's a win-win-win for us in so many ways. Over the last few years, my team has really been hammering the message that sustainability and climate is not an add-on to your job. Most people think, oh, do I have to do that? Do I have to recycle? I have to walk 3 feet over there in a lab, right? But actually, we're giving the message that the climate crisis is a health crisis. So any action that our employees can take, they're actually taking action for health. And so that has really motivated people. And the commute is a great example of that. So we've made a commitment to electrify our 60 buses. We have the world's first double-decker electric buses around. And we have a fleet, we have van pools, carpools. We are giving everybody who lives within a certain radius of Genentech electric bikes to get to work. And if they take that bike, we pay them $7. So we're trying to incentivize everybody to get into commute. And the reason why is because immediately when you don't take your car to work and you get in an electric vehicle to commute, you are not emitting emissions that generate pollution that are contributing to the diseases that Genentech is trying to treat, right? So if we're all driving our fossil fuel cars, I mean, we connect the dots, that then that's impacting the health of people in the Bay Area. And along 101, a lot of the people along that Bay Area are some of the most vulnerable and marginalized. So the third win for us is that it also addresses health equity. And so I could talk all day about commute, but I'll stop.
I was going to mention the meatless Mondays that we have. So trying to give people alternative to having meat on a regular basis as well.
Yeah.
But do you want to tell us about Meta? What's going on there?
Yeah, I think, building on a bit also of what Jeannie had just said, we have our carbon goals. And I think this lens that you started alluding to around climate equity and environmental justice could not be overstated. Like those communities that will be most impacted by climate change are communities of color, are low-income communities. And so all work that we can do in this space is to help support those communities. And often it involves going to those communities and asking them what type of support they need. I'll give one specific example. So we have a net positive by 2030 goal for our water use. So data centers not only take a lot of energy, but quite a bit of water. And that goal means that we're going to be restoring over 100% of the water that we use in our data center communities. And you might think, okay, well, what does that look like? And actually it involves our water team going into the sites where we have our data centers and partnering with local organizations and saying, what help do you need? What support do you need in this space? Working with the Navajo Nation on water quality issues. So not just volumetric, but also looking at how can we be supporting environmental justice topics. And I mention that because a lot of where our footprint isn't as viewable maybe as to the Bay Area, because our largest footprint is at our data centers. But it's of the utmost importance to look at these strategies and look at how companies are setting these goals, and also how are they partnering with the communities to reach those goals, not just buying carbon credits. And so for our net zero program, we're also working a lot with community organizations in different international places, Africa and South America, to really think about, okay, let's not just, buy a tract of land. Let's look at these organizations like Pachamama you mentioned earlier, and how can we be doing, long-term restoration efforts that not only get us to the point of reducing carbon, but also biodiversity benefits. And so I think also what I heard you referencing is this concept of co-benefits. So how can we use the power of our goals and of our brand to really help the communities where we operate?
Yeah, I think that addresses the health equity piece too. How about what's going on at Planet?
Yeah, no, I like what you said, Katie, about really thinking about where you're investing in the community. We're emitting our emissions here, we're offsetting them elsewhere. So we want to make sure that we're at least buying, high quality offsets within these communities that are in the tropics, for example, that are conserving biodiversity. And at Planet, our focus has been really on serving sustainability and enabling companies to become more sustainable. And so I gave some examples around what we've been doing in climate, but Planet's high resolution data is uniquely positioned to support also taking action on deforestation and biodiversity loss, supporting or monitoring sustainable supply chains and also ESG reporting. So for example, we have a partnership with the Norway Ministry Climate and Environment, where we've unlocked data across the entire tropics for monitoring deforestation. And this has allowed communities to be more proactive than reactive to deforestation. So you can see roads that are actually being built, and you can do it in near real time. So you can go out there to deter any deforestation from happening before the first tree is chopped down. We also work a lot with in the agricultural sector, working with farmers, helping them to monitor the crops that they're growing on a near daily basis, so they can be a little bit more informed with the inputs that they're putting into their crops, and make those lands more productive, so that they're not expanding agriculture into forested areas that would house biodiversity, and as well as store that carbon in the ground. So Planet has really been focused, as I mentioned, on enabling sustainability across multiple sectors. And as a company itself and its operations, it's still nascent, to be honest. I mean, we just went carbon neutral for the first time. This last year was our baseline year, and we know now where our highest emissions are. And so we are now starting to think about how are we going to reduce those emissions when the company is growing. And so, one way is, the pandemic has allowed us to learn that we can work remotely. And so even though we're hiring more people, less people are required to actually come physically to the office. So we have more remote workers, which has been great to have that flexibility and don't have that need to commute, because that has contributed to our the highest amount of our carbon emissions in the past. Also, in our offices, we have an office in San Francisco, Berlin, and now recently in Haarlem, Netherlands. We have implemented some initiatives where we are reducing our waste. So we got rid of single-use bottles and cans and now have drinks on tap. We have no more single-use snacks, and everything's in bulk. We have plant-based meals, so no, everything's meatless, both our catered lunches and company-sponsored events, compostable lunches. And if there's any food that's left over, we partner with food runners here locally. So any leftover food will go to those who need it, and nothing will go to waste. So we're taking some small steps, but there's definitely a lot of work that we can still do with our operations.
That's great. And since it's Earth Month, and I know you guys are all very busy with all the events that you have going on, so we're lucky to have you here tonight. Katie, do you want to tell us a little bit of how you keep the employees engaged at Meta?
Yeah, definitely. So we're really lucky to have a super engaged employee base. And right now is Earth Week, and we celebrate Earth Week with doing a host of programming. We have about 20 workshops and panels that are live streamed internally that include, folks talking about the programming that I've mentioned, but also bringing in external experts to really kind of shape the thinking that we have internally. This year, we're doing something called the Meta Earth Advocate or Meta Earth Team Advocates Challenge. It spells meta. It's very meta. So that's a application that we partnered with Earthshare to help create, so that folks could actually tag when they're doing sustainable actions, and it's a fun little competition. And we have a sustainable eco marketplace where people can support small, medium-sized businesses within region. And so that's for Earth Week. And we have a lot of really great global engagement from our employees there. But year-round, we have our employee groups that are regionally based. They're called Green At teams. And they are, doing fun little regional events within their offices and maybe also bringing in speakers. And last year, to help up level kind of the understanding of climate science for those groups, we had offering of the climate, what is it called? Al Gore's climate reality training. There we go. And so we had a bunch of employees take that. And so that was a really fun way that we could give an offering to our employees that are highly engaged and allow them to learn more about climate science and bring that back to their jobs. And the last piece that I'll mention is we do sustainability hackathons. So we have some really great technical employees that want to utilize their skills in that space. And so we co-sponsor a hackathon, and some of those climate product ideas that they have hacked on internally have actually become climate products. So it's really fun. There's a lot of different ways for employees to get involved. And I think that so much of the work that I get to do and my team gets to do is because employees care. So I'm excited to keep stoking that fire.
Definitely. And how about for green jeans?
We don't have hackathons, but I love that idea. Oh, that'd be
We can
great.
talk later.
It takes a lot of energy to engage and educate employees. And we have a new director, and he was like, "Are you sure y'all really need to focus that much on green jeans?" And I thought, I was like, yes, here. And it's because when we educate and engage our employees, then they get to go out and amplify and accelerate and scale everything we're doing. Like earlier before I said, we were always pushing people to do sustainable stuff. But now when you have educated employees, and they're popping up and doing so much stuff that you could hardly keep up with it. So it's really a wonderful problem to have. Too many great things to help with. And that sounds like I'm greenwashing, but I'm really not. But I'll just tell you about one of the ways that we're getting people educated and about climate action. And that over the last year, we were able to put together this whole website, a platform for employees about climate action and why it's important to health and why it's important to diversity and inclusion. So that if you're an employee and you're like, okay, I want to do something, but I don't really know a way to get in, I'm interested. How do I talk to my boss? And you can just go to this website and pick a tool, look at all the toolkits, and then it gives you an example for almost every position we have. You can sort of find a way in, and then you can set goals and share best practices. So that is a way that we've been able to try to get more than just Green Jeans members, to get the other 9,000 of our employees. But just for this month, we had a focus called "Every Job is a Climate Job," and that is because the world needs 1 million climate activists right now, and people really care. So, and we've also found that if you give people things to do about climate, it really helps empower them and feel less helpless. I don't know about you all, but there's a lot of eco-anxiety and a lot of despair going on. So giving people something concrete to do, we found really helps people. And so, yeah, we just had 17 events for Every Job is a Climate Job, to giving people inspiration. I think that's good enough.
Can I build on that really quickly? So just 2 great points that you were making that I want to build on for folks who are maybe thinking about how they can make Every Job a Climate Job programming internally. Drawdown recently put out this really great guide to employee engagement, and we can get the name of that. So if you're looking for ways to kind of stimulate employee engagement, highly recommend that. They did a training for us internally that was awesome. I don't know if you have been using it at all.
Yeah.
It's so great. I'm like learning a lot from it, and I'm going to have them come in and help us get more people, because they have every job, like HR, finance, everything that you would think like maybe this isn't a climate job, and they put a climate lens on it. And that's really helpful because every job is a climate job with this crisis. And then the second point that you brought up around eco-anxiety, I think is really important. And I know that reading the news for all the reasons is very challenging right now, but I heard Sophia Lee, who's a great climate activist, speaking today for one of our Earth Week events. And she had this great line about moving from fear to growth that really stuck with me, and how oftentimes with the news of climate crisis, it's so easy to go into an energy of fear. And it's actually the lowest vibration energy. And how if you can pause and think about action, which is what you're doing with that programming, it really brings people up to